Hello everyone, my name is Leah and today we are going to be talking about Baba Yaga's Assistant, written by Marika McCoola and illustrated by Emily Carroll. So Baba Yaga's Assistant is a graphic novel that tells the story of Masha as she tries to get through life after the death of her mother and her grandmother, both of which meant very, very much to her. A couple of years after the death of her mother, her father decided that he wanted to remarry, and the woman that he was going to marry was going to bring in a new child. For a time, Masha tried to get along with this new child, but it didn't exactly happen because this child was very young and kind of bratty and just didn't really want anything to do with Masha. One day Masha is reading through the papers and she sees that Baba Yaga has put in a listing for an assistant, which is kind of funny since Baba Yaga is supposed to be this mystical creature and yet she's listing help wanted ads in the paper. That was just kind of funny to me. So Masha decided that she wanted to try out to be Baba Yaga's assistant. So she takes all of the knowledge that she had gained from the fairy tales that her grandmother used to tell her whenever she was younger and try to find Baba Yaga's house, which is like this kind of shack looking thing on chicken legs, just like it is in some of the fairy tales. In order to become Baba Yaga's assistant, Masha has to pass all of these little tests that Baba Yaga sets up for her. And these tests include things like cleaning the house in a day, or washing Baba Yaga's reptile pets, trying to tame a bear, and stuff like that. Sort of these impossible tasks that you get in other fairy tales. Baba Yaga's assistant can actually be seen as kind of like this modern retelling of the Baba Yaga tales from Russian culture. So there are several different types of Baba Yaga tales, including just the tales that are entitled Baba Yaga, but also the tale of Vasilisa the Beautiful. These tales all kind of have like very similar plot structures, very similar characters, and like they always have like 3 tasks that these girls need to complete, you know, all that kind of stuff. The tales just differ just a little bit depending on who's telling them, and you know, just like regular folk tales do. So for those of you who don't know, Baba Yaga actually is a creature character that is actually fairly prominent in Russian folk tales. She shows up quite a bit, sometimes as like a singular person and sometimes as like these 3 sisters, all of which are named Baba Yaga. Her character kind of changes depending on who's telling the story or what the story is about. So she can be this like evil character, but she can also be a benefactor. Actually kind of interesting because whether or not she is evil versus a benefactor actually kind of depends on the gender of the main character. So in tales with female protagonists, Baba Yaga is kind of this eviler character where I think she's supposed to represent this motherly figure, like this twisted motherly figure that really does nothing but like order girls around. And this is tied back to Russian culture, where Russia has a patrilocal type of marriage system. So girls will marry someone and then they have to move in with their husbands. So when a girl moves in, the mother of her new husband kind of gives her hell. A lot of the times, like, she gives her chores that she doesn't want to do. Like, honestly, it's kind of a bad situation for the new bride. And then the mother will just continue to treat her son like he's royalty, no matter if he's like the worst person in the world and his new wife is the best. She will always get the short end of the stick. That's just kind of a rite of passage. Kind of sucks, but So while Baba Yaga's assistant is also a fairy tale retelling in itself, it does reference other major fairy tales as Masha uses them in order to complete her tasks. Some of the fairy tales that are referenced include The Frog Prince, Beauty and the Beast, East the Sun and West the Moon. I think maybe Eros and Psyche, though that one can be kind of shaky because it's kind of like East the Sun, West the Moon. I think it's kind of interesting how Marika can include these other more familiar fairy tales so that the reader can kind of understand what exactly is going on. In fact, I would say a lot of these Baba Yaga tales are kind of similar to Cinderella. I think that these tales can kind of act as like a starting point for some of these new readers, because those kinds of tales are usually what people will know about, and they might not know about some of the more lesser known ones. So it's really kind of nice that Marika uses these to kind of familiarize the reader with what exactly is going on and how the story is probably going to play out. Baba Yaga's Assistant is actually a very fun story about a girl trying to find her place in the world. By the end of the story, she actually does pass all of her tests, and Baba Yaga does take her on to be her full-time assistant. I kind of wished that this graphic novel was actually just a little bit longer, because I kind of want to see how Masha would take on being Baba Yaga's actual full-time assistant and what she would do, the kind of things that she would learn and stuff like that. Because this is a graphic novel, we do have to talk about the art. The art style is actually fairly whimsical and uses these vibrant watercolor kind of techniques in its coloring. It's kind of unclear whether this is like done in traditional watercolor or if this is done digitally. I think it's kind of interesting that the art style is actually kind of vaguely reminiscent of these Cartoon Network shows like Adventure Time, Bravest Warriors, Over the Garden Wall, and most notably Bee and Puppycat. And I say Bee and Puppycat more than some of the other ones because of the art style and also how colors are used. Both works tend to use like the same color palette or the same kind of tone palette for entire pages or entire spreads. So oftentimes in Baba Yaga's Assistant, entire pages will either be in entirely warm colors or entirely cool colors. Sometimes there are these instances where a page will be like entirely in a cool color, but one object will be in a different tone, and so that kind of really stands out to the reader. It's really striking. I know that Emily Carroll is actually a very big fan of Adventure Time, as she does have fan art of the character Marceline from Adventure Time. And I do think that it is kind of funny though that Baba Yaga actually bears a lot of resemblance to the Ice King also from Adventure Time. So I think there is kind of this clear influence here. Anyway, I think that is about all that I really want to say about Baba Yaga's Assistant, so I will see you in the next one. Bye!